Hi there and welcome back to Dr. C's Morning Minute. Glad you could be here. So I've been doing this series on self-stimulatory behaviors, providing tips and suggestions and some conceptual ideas about what these behaviors are all about. But of course you're going to do your own research. You're going to be going online, you're looking on YouTube, as you should. There's a tremendous amount of extraordinarily valuable information out there, and you should be seeking it and absorbing it without question. However, the challenging part for you, God bless you, is that it's really confusing. You're going to hear so many different things about this aspect of autism. You'll be getting so much feedback that oftentimes is contradictory, to be frank. And that can be really confusing and frustrating. You know, it's interesting. Even what they call STEMs, or again, I'll run through some names, it can be rather confusing, and you wonder, are we talking about the same thing? Because even sometimes how they characterize the behavior can be quite different within the field of autism. You'll see them referred to as self-stimulatory behaviors, self-stims, stims, stereotypical behaviors, stereotypies, stereotomies, tics, perseverative behaviors, self-reinforcing behaviors, compulsive behaviors, OCD. It's even not entirely uncommon where I'll see kiddos diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder when really it's a STEM. You'll see the acronym SSB, which is self-stimulatory behaviors, not to be confused with SIB, which is self-interest behavior. Again, it gets really confusing, and so many different names for this same thing. The reason or the cause for the disorder, or for this aspect of autism, is also confusing and multifaceted, and you hear so many different things. For example, the most common thing that you're going to hear is that self-stimulatory behaviors are caused by sensory issues. So either the child is sensory seeking or sensory avoiding or overwhelmed by sensory information. Far and away the most common. You also hear avoidance tendencies. The child is involved in a task that they don't want to be involved in, so they'll stem to avoid it. Attention seeking as well. So again, it can be rather confusing because depending upon what the cause is will determine how we go about treating it. In terms of treatment, you're going to hear lots of different aspects about that. You're going to hear that we should interrupt it. Sometimes somebody even say we should punish it. We need to, these behaviors are very stigmatizing, and we need to shape them into something else. Some might say, you're going to see this without question, is that don't interrupt them, that these behaviors are essentially a defense mechanism, and the kiddo needs these self-stimulatory behaviors. They are using these behaviors to cope, and it's vitally important. And if you remove them, it makes them worse. They'll just find something else to self-stimulate on, and it's just counterproductive. You'll actually, sometimes interestingly, you'll hear that as you go online, you'll see kiddos, young adults, whomever with autism, and they'll be speaking about their own experience, and it's really interesting to hear their own discussions about what they experienced both when they were kiddos as well as currently. And they'll often say, listen, I need this, I need to do this, it's really important for me. And again, that leads into the treatment process as to how we allow outlets for that. Again, whether it be specific times for the behavior, and controlling it in more social situations. But speaking of the social situations, you also a strong perspective that deals with the idea that society needs to be the one to adapt, not the individuals. That autism is not a disorder, and that these behaviors are just behaviors, and society needs to simply deal with it better, and just to simply accept it. Now again, there's a balancing act with that as well, and we'll talk more about that in posts to come. But if a kiddo is involved heavily and this is typically how we go about considering the treatment process, is if the behavior is extraordinarily interrupting of the child's ability to function and learn and carry on in the classroom, then we likely have to try to modify it to some extent. If it's occasional mild hand flapping, well, maybe in fact, society, the classroom, peers, need to just kind of deal with it and just accept it. It's not that big a deal. So, God bless you. I recognize that this gets really confusing, and the challenging part about it is this: None of these things is wrong necessarily. All these aspects, names that they call it, except for the OCD, which we'll get into that later. But the causes and the ways to deal with it, they're not necessarily wrong. They're extraordinarily child specific. So for one kiddo, we may very well transition to something else and do it rather assertively. For the kiddo, no, not even remotely. We're gonna indulge it to far more extent. And so again, it does get confusing. It's multifaceted. Within the field, and from my own experience, of all the aspects of autism that we deal with, whether it be social, communicative, as well as these self-stimulatory behaviors, it's this latter issue, these stems, that tend to be the most challenging because they are so multifaceted. So we're going to break this down a bit more for you in posts ahead, where we take a look at some of these factors and take a look at the decisions you'll make as to how to handle treatment aspects of this based on the cause and based on, again, what's behind it. Oftentimes, and we'll talk more about this again, is you go with your gut feeling. Sometimes it's painfully obvious as what's going on, sometimes not so much. Sometimes it's a gut feeling and we use an experimental approach. So we'll talk more about this. See you next time. Dr. C's Morning Minute.